Uniformly and overwhelmingly, the American people have rejected the concept of marriage between two women or two men. That's 31 states where it's been put to a vote. The voters in every one of those states said, no, we prefer traditional marriage between a man and a woman. But some politicians are pushing for it anyway, especially now in New York. Christy.
As you said, Pat, absolutely. The latest battleground is actually in New York. That legislature is close to passing it before their session ends next week. In fact, Heather Sells has the story.
New York has tried to pass a gay marriage bill for years, but this week it might actually happen. On Tuesday, a second Republican state senator said he'll support it, creating a 31-31 tie in the Senate.
These social votes are very difficult. You know, telling people how to live in their own personal lives is very difficult.
Yes, we are gay and we are straight, but we are one state because we are New York.
New York's Governor Andrew Cuomo strongly supported gay marriage in his campaign, and this year he's assembled an A-team of political strategists in Albany to fight for it. His powerful teammate, New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg, is also hard at work lobbying GOP fence-sitters in the state Senate.
In this latest battle, gay rights advocates are counting on Governor Cuomo and Mayor Bloomberg to get the job done. But traditional marriage supporters say they have a multi-ethnic network of churches and the people they represent.
It'll recontextualize and reboot culture. Health care will change. They'll force the gay curriculum will come into the schools in a greater measure.
Bishop Joseph Matera leads Brooklyn's Resurrection Church and the political advocacy group Christ Covenant Coalition. He says networks of clergy around the state are banding together to combat this year's push for gay marriage. New York's assembly has already approved it, so the focus now is on a small group of undecided senators.
We think that the battle has to be won this time by phone calls and emails.
And California's marriage law is in the courts. A federal judge has upheld a ruling that struck down the ban on same-sex marriage in California. Voters in that state passed Proposition 8, which said marriage is only between one man and one woman. But a California judge struck it down. Prop 8 supporters challenged his ruling because they say the judge had a conflict of interest. California Judge Vaughn Walker has admitted that he's gay and living in a long-term relationship with another man. Prop 8 groups say that could make him a direct beneficiary of striking down the law. But the federal judge disagreed. The ruling does not settle the broader legal fight over Proposition 8. And the federal marriage law is also under attack in court. That law is called DOMA, the Defense of Marriage Act, and it also bans same-sex marriage. The country's largest consumer bankruptcy court has declared it unconstitutional. Legal experts don't expect this case to go to the Supreme Court, but they think that's where DOMA and the issue of marriage will ultimately be decided. Heather Sells, CBN News.
Thank you, Heather. This is a sad day for America. We want everybody to have civil rights and have rights. There's nothing about taking rights away from people. But marriage is a sacred covenant, has been blessed by God between a man and a woman for the procreation of children. And every time, in every society throughout history, where the society has turned to accepting and advocating open homosexuality, that society has fallen. And the same thing is going to happen here in America. It's just one more slope, time down the slippery slope. It's a shame, but it will destroy our nation. It's a question of how soon. I mean, will it be 1 year, 10 years, 20 years? It'll happen sooner or later. When you destroy marriage, marriage is the foundational block of our society. And when marriage, traditional marriage is destroyed, where a man and a woman come in union together to raise children, when that union is broken and when the laws mitigate against it, then what you're going to find out is that society has no glue when it falls apart. It's going to happen, and it's happening more and more. We'll find a disintegration of this society. And I suppose I won't live long enough to see it happen, but nevertheless, your children and my children and grandchildren will. Well, Lee Webb has the rest of our top stories in the CBN Newsroom. Lee?
Pat, the legal battle over displaying the Ten Commandments is going back to the Supreme Court. The American Center for Law and Justice wants the High Court to overturn a decision removing the commandments from an Ohio courtroom. That display is a poster titled "Philosophies of Law in Conflict." A judge posted it to demonstrate the tension between legal and moral philosophies. A federal appeals court had said the display violated the First Amendment and was unconstitutional. But the ACLJ has filed a petition with the High Court asking it to reverse that decision, Pat.
It's time the High Court clarify some of their disparate rulings about the First Amendment. It has been a mishmash of confusion over the years because they have gotten it wrong over and over and over again. The idea that you couldn't post in a courtroom a plaque that shows all these various points of view is just insanity. And the Supreme Court has the Ten Commandments in its own chambers. And how can a federal judge say that a local municipal judge or whatever he was is violating the separation of church and state? That's not in the Constitution. They have interpreted the Constitution. It's been pushed to ridiculous extremes. And the ACLU wants to bring about a society in which there are no religious values, none whatsoever. They want no religion in the public square whatsoever. Well, we are a religious people. We're one who came together to worship God, and we have got the name of God in every constitution, in every state, in the whole United States. All 50 states have some mention of God in the Constitution, every one of them. And so for some little pipsqueak judge to come out and say, well, that's unconstitutional, outrageous. But it's time for the Supreme Court to make a ringing declaration and say, look, this is what the law is and has been and shall be, and we're going to clarify some of the mistakes that previous judges' courts have made. They can do that, and it's time they do it. Lee?
Federal Reserve Chairman Ben Bernanke is calling on Republicans to raise the national debt ceiling. The U.S. hit the $14.3 trillion borrowing limit in May. Republicans say the government should not borrow any more money without making big budget cuts. Bernanke says budget cuts are necessary, but
history makes clear that failure to put our fiscal house in order will erode the vitality of our economy, reduce the standard of living in the United States, and increase the risk of economic and financial instability. I fully understand the desire to use the debt limit to force some necessary and difficult fiscal policy adjustments, but the debt limit is the wrong tool for that important job.
The deadline for raising the debt ceiling is August the 2nd. The General Secretary of OPEC believes oil prices will rise again later this year, and that could hurt the world economy. He tells Reuters there will be oil shortages in the second half of 2011, and that will drive prices higher. OPEC met last week to set targets for its oil production, but the talks failed to produce a deal. Some analysts believing oil could reach $120 or more next year. That could send gasoline prices well above $4 a gallon. Gold could be on its way to $5,000 an ounce. Standard Chartered Bank says that central banks are now buying gold instead of selling it. The London-based bank also points to increased buying by China and India. It predicts that only a small number of new major gold mines will go into operation in the next 5 years. All of that adds up to more demand for gold and no significant increase in supply. Pat?
If gold hits $5,000 an ounce, you're going to see people picking the fillings out of grandma's teeth. I mean, it's going to be, they'll be scrambling for gold everywhere they can around the world. But Standard Chartered is a pretty reputable bank, and I wouldn't be surprised. I've been saying $1,800 an ounce, and that was when it was maybe $600. Now it's at $1,500 plus. It's almost at $1,800, and the numbers are going up. If it hit the level it was during the inflationary times, and allowing for inflation, I should say, it would be about $2,300 an ounce. So that would be comparing to what it was when gold had its big run a few years ago. But we'll see. $5,000. You got your gold?
I don't have my gold, so I keep waiting for you to give me a bar.
You don't get given. You go buy it at one of those brokers.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I've said it before, and I'll say it again right now. All I can afford is gold dust. Dust, brother.
Get a little dust then.
I'll get some dust.
All right.
I'm still looking for a bar for me.
Okay. You know, I watched occasionally. I was told that I had better get some therapy if I do it very often. That channel called MSNBC is just so left-wing. And they were raving and ranting about the fact that the unions are going to kick out the governor of Wisconsin. Well, the governor of Wisconsin just won a big victory in the Supreme Court of Wisconsin, validating a law which says we can't have government unions having unusual benefits when the government has no money. It was a real simple thing. We can't pay what we don't have. Lee has more on that story.
Here are the details, Pat, to that story. Wisconsin's move to end union bargaining rights for public workers will stand. You may recall the law sparked weeks of massive protest in Wisconsin's capital, and as you can see here, they trashed the building. More than a dozen Democratic lawmakers fled the state to prevent a vote. Eventually, though, a judge slapped a restraining order to keep the law from going into effect. But Tuesday, the state Supreme Court sided with Republicans and lifted that order. The court ruled the district judge did not have the power to issue the restraining order. Democrats acknowledge they don't have the votes to stop the bill, but they vow to keep fighting.
It's going to take a while for us to rebuild the gains of the last century that were just repealed here, but we're prepared to do it, and that's what we're working on.
We always felt that we followed our rules the way we normally do, and that we never violated the Constitution, and that's what the court felt as well.
The court declined to review a part of that suit that claimed Republicans violated open meeting laws. A low-fat, well-balanced diet could lower your risk of developing Alzheimer's and improve your memory. Limiting saturated fats and choosing rich carbohydrates like whole grains and beans steadies a person's blood sugar. A new study shows that can help reduce biomarkers associated with Alzheimer's. The study finds that high-fat food affects your brain and ability to think and may play a factor in developing Alzheimer's. 13% of people over the age of 65 suffer from the disease. It is the most common form of dementia. Pat?
Thank you, Lee. That is a cruel disease. It breaks your heart when you see somebody who's a loved one just leave. They leave. They're no longer in their body. Their body's there, but their mind isn't.
Yeah.
So what'd you have for breakfast?
2 eggs and an English muffin. That's good. And a big thing of water. That's very healthy. It was a whole grain, high fiber muffin, and then 2 eggs. Normally I have 1, but I was hungry.
Cholesterol. Well, I guess eggs are
No,
good
but that's
for
good.
you.
It's a good protein. What'd you have?
I had almonds, walnuts, pecans, oatmeal, oat bran, blueberries,
Very good.
raspberries, some other kind of berries, pure maple syrup, and skim milk.
Sounds delish.
It was unbelievable, and I put some cinnamon on top of it, which is good for you, too.
That's what I'm talking about. These are all brain foods. That's why we're so brilliant and smart.
Yeah. Well, I'm also taking phosphatidylserine, which I recommend highly.
Try to say that 3 times.
Phosphatidylserine. Phosphatidylserine complex.
Come on, brother. I'm with you.
The Southern Baptist Convention has elected a black pastor as its vice president. It's the first time in the denomination's history that an African American has been named to the number 2 post. The election of Reverend Fred Luter of New Orleans is a milestone for the denomination, which has worked to overcome a history of racism. The Southern Baptists have seen a decline in membership and is trying to diversify their appeal among blacks, Hispanics, and Asians. Reverend Luter pastors one of an estimated 3,400 black congregations in the denomination. Black congregations represent less than 8% of the more than 45,000 Southern Baptist churches. The wife of the late Reverend David Wilkerson is recovering from her injuries. The couple was involved in a car crash in April. David Wilkerson was killed and Gwen suffered serious injuries, including a broken hip. The World Challenge website says the orthopedic surgeon working with Mrs. Wilkerson is, quote, very happy with her recovery. You can always get the latest from CBN News by going to our website at cbnnews.com.